What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Ratch Report. It is time to talk hoops, and it is time to talk about 5 NBA players that will take the biggest leap next season. So if you're ready to watch this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you wish to hit the subscribe button as well, that would be very much appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into today's list. So the first player I have on my list here is Brandon Miller. Now, Brandon Miller is a player I'm absolutely fascinated with, not only because he had a great rookie season, but it is in the ways that he scores the basketball. When you look at his offensive game, you look at the talent that he possesses as a 6'9" forward, small forward, wherever the Hornets decide to play him. He scores in multitude of ways. It's one thing to be able to score 17 plus points a game, but for a rookie to come in and display the offensive talents that he has possessed and he will continue to grow, it is quite impressive. Again, Brandon Miller, to quickly go over his stats here. Again, 6'9" forward, 201 pounds. He's going to be 22 in November. Averaged 17.3 points, shot the ball really well from the three-point line as well, 37.3% from the line on 6.7 attempts per game. Field goal percentage was quite impressive at 44%. Shot the free throws also quite impressively for a rookie. Again, 82%, averaged 4.3 rebounds, 2.4 assists, almost about a steal a game, and 0.6 blocks a game. So why is Brandon Miller someone that I expect to take a big leap next season? He is someone that is, as a 6'9" forward, he has modeled his game after Paul George, and he's come out and said that as well. And similarly to how when we talk about his offensive talents, when you think about someone like a Paul George, you think of three-level scorers, right? Guys that can catch and shoot, hit the threes, they can hit jump shots. They can also pull up from dribbling the ball, pull up for jump shots, pull up for three-point shots, but then also attack the basket very uniquely as well. And for Brandon Miller, again, having his size at 6'9" really does help. So I do expect him to take a big leap next season. It would not surprise me one bit if he ends up being an all-star next season because of how talented he is. I think the only thing will be how is he going to play with LaMelo, because his numbers do take a little bit of a dip when both of them are playing together, which is understandable. Brandon Miller is a score first forward. His passing game will need a little bit of work, but I do expect him to very easily average 21, 22 points next season. His rebounds could be a lot higher as well, particularly being a 6'9" forward. So again, the offensive talent he has is quite unique. It's amazing to see 6'9" guys like Paul George. And I mean, like he said, he's modeled his game after Paul George. So Brandon Miller is someone I have on my list here who I expect to take a big leap next season. And let's move on to player number 2 here. Now, player number 2 may be a little bit surprised to some people. Not if you watch the Warriors. This is Jonathan Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga is such a fascinating player because of how athletic he is, how good he is defensively, but then also because of how he is developing slowly but surely his offensive game. A lot of players throughout the past few seasons have constantly been compared to someone like Kawhi Leonard. But if there is one player that could be a really establish himself as one of the better two-way players in the NBA in the next season or two, that is going to be Jonathan Kuminga. When you watch some of his defensive highlights, it's not as if he's just getting a lot of steals. It's not as if he's just getting blocks, but it's also when you watch the clip, he is a few steps ahead of already other players thinking about making the pass. That's why he's able to intercept the passes he does. But also when he's playing defense, you see the way he gets his hand in there. It really reminds me of a younger Kawhi Leonard, especially when he played Oklahoma City Thunder in that playoff series. And you saw some of the defensive highlights Kawhi put on display there. And those are some of the same highlights I saw from Jonathan Kuminga defensively as well. But in terms of offensively, again, he was a little bit more of a raw talent coming to the NBA. And his second season, it didn't seem like he developed a lot. But his third season, taking a look at his stats here, he did take a much, much bigger leap offensively. And that's why I think he's going to take a big leap next season as well, considering that Klay Thompson's gone. But taking a look at his stats here, you see that he went from 9.9 points in his second season to averaging 16.1 points. That's a huge leap of almost 7 points a game. His rebounding, 4.8 rebounds, 2.2 assists as well. The one thing that really impresses me, and one of the reasons I believe Jonathan Kuminga is going to be a major, I'm not saying all-star player, but he's going to be a really good, I don't want to say role player, but a really good player for the Warriors next season is his field goal percentage. He took about 4 field goal attempts per game more than the previous season. Yet you look at his field goal percentage, 52.9%. Similarly to his 2-point attempts per game, he went from averaging 5.2 attempts per game to 9.4 attempts per game on his 2-point shots. His field goal percentage remained relatively the same as well, right? So again, his 3-point shot needs to come back. Dipped a little bit last season, but Jonathan Kuminga, just in terms of when you compare him to Kawhi Leonard, I mean, you could even make a bold statement as to say he's got a higher not saying higher at ceiling than him, but just higher athleticism. Like the way he gets up there for dunks is absolutely it's amazing. You don't really expect him to get that high, and he just really surprises you with his dunk. So again, Jonathan Kuminga, especially now with Klay Thompson gone, I do expect him to take a bigger role offensively as well. And the Warriors will need to rely on him, right? Steph Curry's getting older, Draymond's getting older as well. Not that Draymond was someone they relied on offensively, but it is someone they kind of initiated the offense a little bit, right? So again, we'll see what happens with Jonathan Kuminga as a player. I'm really fascinated with. Let's move on to player number 3 here. Player number 3 here is someone I personally believe could take the biggest statistical leap in every, or at least a lot of the 3, 4 main stats when we look at points, rebounds, assists. And this is no other than Alperen Sengun. Alperen Sengun has been a very interesting player for the Houston Rockets. When you look at his game, I don't know if he's publicly stated this, but you can definitely see a lot of Nikola Jokic in there. And similarly to how some of the other international players like Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Domantas Sabonis have kind of offensively anyways modeled their game, it kind of seems like Sengun is kind of doing the same thing. He's not the most athletic player. He's not the most explosive player. He's not the strongest of players either. Actually plays very slow, similarly to Nikola Jokic, but how he's able to rebound, how he's able to see the floor in terms of his vision, how he's able to score as well is quite interesting as well. So to quickly go over his statistics here, again, 6'11 forward, he's 22 years old, average 21.1 points per game last season. That's about a nearly a 7-point jump, and that is massive considering 14.8 points was already a jump from his first season as well. His rebounds went up a little bit to 9.3 rebounds. His assists took a massive leap as well. He went from averaging 3.9 assists to 5 assists per game. And again, that is a big jump for centers before people say, well, it's only about an assist more per game. But again, just in terms of his field goal percentage, similarly, he took 5 more attempts per game, similar to how we saw with Jonathan Kuminga. He took more field goal attempts, yet his field goal percentage remained relatively the same at about 53.7%, right? His 3-point shot obviously needs to come up a little bit, but he took a lot more threes last season as well. But again, this is going to be a statistical darling. If you're ever playing fantasy basketball, this is someone that's going to give you a lot of rebounds, a lot of points, a lot of assists as well. Again, just my bold prediction from him, I wouldn't be surprised next season if he's averaging 25 points, 11 rebounds a game, 6.5 assists, maybe even 7, depending on, how much they gave him the ball. So it would not surprise me, guys. Alperen Sengun is very likely to be an all-star next season. He's going to be someone that a lot of casual fans will jump on the bandwagon off because of how good he'll be performing offensively. So Alperen Sengun is someone I personally believe out of all these players is very likely to be an all-star next season. I mean, he's going to take a massive, massive leap, and it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if he does become an all-star, but this is a fascinating player. And honestly, I just firmly believe the way his game has transitioned over the few seasons, you can definitely see his stats just really taking a massive leap. So Alperen Sengun is a player I personally am very high on. It wouldn't surprise me if in a couple seasons we start talking about him as a superstar, right? So is a player I do really like on, and Rockets clearly have a good player in Alperen Sengun. Let's move on to player number 4 here. Player number 4 is also a very fascinating player, plays for the Atlanta Hawks, and yes, this is no other than Jalen Johnson. Quickly taking a look at his stats here again, 6'9 forward. It's always very fascinating with these modern NBA players. I know KD did it, guys, but not a lot of players did this back, 5, 7, 8 years ago, where they're 6'9 and they're doing what they can do in terms of scoring, in terms of passing, in terms of rebounding. Yes, that's why Paul George is kind of considered a unique basketball player, right? The way he dribbles the ball. But in terms of Jalen Johnson, just quickly going over his stats, I know a lot of people have talked about him, but he doesn't get enough credit. He averaged 5.6 points in his second season in the NBA. Last season, he averaged 16 points. That's an 11-point jump. Also, he doubled the amount of rebounds he gets. His second rebound, he averaged 4 rebounds a game. Last season, he averaged 8.7 rebounds a game. He nearly tripled. He actually did triple his assists as well. 1.2 assists in his second season. His third season, 3.6 assists. He also got 1.2 steals a game. And for a player that isn't considered a strong 3-point shooter, yes, it's on 3.6 attempts per game. He shot the ball 35% from the 3-point line as well. His free throws took another 10% jump as well. Went from averaging 62.8% from the free throw line to 72.8 as well. So this is a player, very young player. He's very talented. He's also quite athletic as well. And with DeJounte Murray now gone and the Atlanta Hawks having a little bit more, probably going to create a bigger role for him offensively. He's also a very unique player as well in terms of, not going to compare him to Brandon Miller. I don't think he's offensively as talented, but when we talk about unique ways of scoring, he does use his body a little bit. He does hit some jump shots. He relies, of course, on a lot of alley hoops from Trae Young, who does a good job of getting him the ball. He hits the threes, but also he just occasionally he'll surprise you in the ways he scores. I'm not saying he can do it all the time, but like occasionally you'll see his highlights. He'll do a Euro step here. He gets a rebound. He scores in a he has some finesse to his game. When you watch him offensively, there's definitely some talent there. Clearly, not some talent, a lot of talent there. And again, Jalen Johnson is quite unique in the way he scores. It's not always the same. He'll occasionally, he'll surprise you with the way he does get some of his baskets as well. And I really do expect a massive lead from Jalen Johnson, considering he's a forward and Trae Young's a point guard. So they can kind of feed off of each other. It's a little bit different when we talk about point guards and shooting guards kind of playing together, like DeJounte and Trae. Clearly wasn't working. They both needed the ball. But Jalen can kind of feed off of Trae's energy as well and just play really well with him. And he's probably going to be the number 2 options offensively as well. So I expect Jalen Johnson to also take a massive leap offensively as well. This is a player I think the Atlanta Hawks have a really good player. And I mean, if they do move on from Trae Young, do not be surprised if Jalen Johnson is the player they build around. He's already established himself as being a good young player, and he's going to completely take a huge leap next season as well. So he's the 4th player on my list. Let's move on to our final and 5th player on the list. And this may surprise a few people. And we got another Warrior on the list here. This is Brandon Podziemski. Quite a fascinating player. 6'5" player, just rebounds so well for his size. I do want to pinpoint, before we talk about his stats here, in the 8 games that Steph Curry did not play last season, Brandon averaged 14 points, 7.5 rebounds. Yes, 7.5 rebounds for a 6'5" player, 4.5 assists per game. And mind you, this was his rookie season. So taking a look at his stats there and keeping the numbers I have just mentioned in mind, he averaged 9.2 points, 5.8 rebounds, 3.7 assists, shot the three-point ball exceptionally well for a rookie, 38% on 3.2 attempts per game. His free throws obviously need a little bit of improvement, but in terms of his game overall is so fascinating the way you watch him. He is, I'm not saying he's like Steph Curry, but you could definitely see some sassiness, his boldness, and just how confident he is as a young player coming in. And for him to kind of, if you watch some of his highlights, he's got like bank corner threes from the corner threes. So it's quite impressive of how he shoots offensively. And do not be surprised. Again, do not be surprised. Similarly to how I mentioned with Jalen Johnson, now that Klay Thompson's gone, similarly to how I mentioned Jonathan Kuminga, this is going to be someone that Warriors rely heavily on to be a very highly offensively talented player. And do not be surprised if he's the number 3 option there. Yes, Buddy Hield's going to get a lot of shots, but you need a lot of shot creation. And I think Brandon really comes into the play when we talk about him. Of course, it kind of depends on if they're most likely going to use Buddy at the 2 in the starting lineup, which means Brandon might just be coming off the bench. But we'll see what the Warriors do with Brandon. I do expect him to be really talented offensively. Again, his projection may not be as high as some of the other players I have listed, but I do expect him to take a leap. And again, considering that Steph Curry is getting older, he's probably going to sit out a lot of games just to get ready for the playoffs as well. Brandon is someone the Warriors will rely heavily on. So let me know your thoughts, guys. These are the 5 players I expect a big leap from. Obviously, it would have been easy to put on guys like Victor Wembanyama, Chet Holmgren as well. That would have been very, very easy to put on. But I want to give some of these other players on the list here. And also, I really like the 5 players I have listed here. Let me know down in the comment section of which players you think will take a big leap and whether you agree with my list here and what your list looks like. So that will be it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.